Yeah, typically you won't be able to do as much, or if you do, you'll have to really increase your budget to bring in double the resources to get it done. So there's this balancing act between these three elements. So the government, the individual task order manager or the manager responsible for a piece of the contract always has to be managing these things. So let's say, for example, you provide help desk support from 8 to 4 every day. 8 to 4 every day. And the government says to you, you know what, it would be so helpful because we have people located outside our time zone if you could just stay open till 5 o'clock every day. And you being the good contractor and wanting to have this great customer relationship, you're like, oh yeah, sure. Well, guess what? You have now doubled your labor requirements because you can't just have one person can't stay there because of lunch breaks and adding that extra hour. You're going to have to bring in an additional person to support that activity, which means most of the time they're going to be sitting around with nothing to do because the phone's not ringing, but yet you still have to. So you always want to make sure that you don't, what the government was trying to do there is, which one of these were they trying to impact? Which one? Scope, right? They were trying to get more work from you, and they wanted you to keep this and this the same. And if you just said yes to this, these two areas could be impacted. So you always need to make sure that you keep that in mind. Set up a deliverable development process, we'll talk about that later. And then if multiple award, develop a task order response process. So sometimes the government makes a single award just to you. Sometimes the government will say in their RFP, we reserve the right to award to multiple vendors. And what they're saying with that statement is they're protecting themselves either way. They can either award to one company or they can award to multiple companies. So you will find that most government agencies put that statement in because that way they can go either way. When they decide to go multiple award, kind of where their head is we have a really large requirement. And this is let's say it's a small business set aside. And we don't feel any one small business can meet all our needs. So instead of turning this into a large, open, competitive procurement, negotiated procurement, we're going to keep it small, but we're not just going to hire one small company, we're going to hire 5 small companies. And what that means is when the government comes out with now they have a piece of work that they have to do. We've won the contract, we're 1 of 5, now they have a piece of work that needs to be done. They come out with a description of what that work is, and they send it to all 5 companies. And each of the 5 companies will then go to their contract, and they'll see the labor categories they proposed and the rates they proposed, and they will look at that statement of work, and they'll say, how many manufacturing assistants do we need here? How many plant managers do we need for this? And based on the work and what your labor categories are, they say, oh, we need 5 hours of this person's time, 10 hours of this person's time. And then they multiply times their labor rate, and that's the amount they give back to the government. We call that the task order response cycle. So you need to have some cycle set up if you're doing cost reimbursable and you've got you've got multiple awards. And that wasn't very nice, was it?
Just out of curiosity, when they set up the special counsel for all this, do they go through the same process, or is that just circumvented completely, and here's a blank check, and here you go, and have fun?
It's not appropriated funds.
Yeah. No, this just goes for products and services that they're buying. In the case of a special counsel, they're using internal government resources for that. So there wouldn't be any procurement activity. Similarly, if you go after grant money, so Sam knows all about grants, if you ever go out for grant money from the federal government, there's a body of, there's the FAR that governs everything for procurement, but the grants have a different set of rules that apply to grants. So I got a call, I'm helping this association who takes first responders from the United States over to Israel, and Israelis teach them how they deal with first responders. Obviously, they're the hotbed for everything terror, and so they've really fine-tuned their skills and honed their expertise. So they teach our first responders how to do these things. And I'm working with this organization because I want to go over to Israel because I'm doing a lot of work around school safety. So if a active shooter comes into a classroom, I'm training teachers so that they know how to respond to that. And Israel doesn't have any school shootings. So by gosh, I'd like to know how they do that, right? So one of the things I'm doing for them is helping them get grant money. So she sends me a grant that had been unapproved. And she said, would you please review this and tell me what's wrong with it? It didn't get accepted. It was an unsolicited proposal. It was an unsolicited grant proposal, and we didn't get a little bit of money. And she said, so I did that. And I said, well, first off, you're using an unsolicited proposal contract process, not an unsolicited proposal grant process. And that's problem one. So I put this whole like 3-page summary together of what was wrong with this document. So she calls me up this week. I was taking care of my dad on Friday down at the beach. And I'm sitting there talking to him, and she calls me up and she goes, Marianne, I wasn't straight with you. And I said, what are you talking about? She goes, you know when I asked you to review that grant proposal? I said, Jen, she goes, well, actually, the FBI is involved with this. And I'm just like, yeah, that would have been useful information to have. So, out of this conversation about the FBI, my dad's sitting there like, what the hell are you doing? But the issue was that they had hired, there was a grant writing company who was recommended to this association. So this association I'm working with is non-for-profit. They're the ones that actually take people over to Israel. And what they're trying to get money for is a lot of states and locales, you can either add a few extra police officers, or you can send people over to Israel to learn how to this really great training. And so local jurisdictions are making decisions not to, and this is really sad. Some of them are saying, we're anti-Semitic and we're not willing to support this. So all kinds of crazy reasons why police officers who really benefit from this training, or first responders, can't get over there to get this training. And the crazy thing was, there was a bomber down in Austin who kept leaving bombs all over the place, and they couldn't catch him. And it was just kept being all these surprise bombs. And one of the people who went on this trip reached back to Israel to their bomb expert, and the bomb expert worked with them, and they were able to catch this guy. So they've got about 35 of these stories, and the program's only been around for like 3 or 4 years. So it's really an effective use of money because they're getting, and it's not that expensive to go over there, but that's why they're trying to get these grants. But come to find out, the reason why FBI is involved is because this company they were recommended by someone, and they had a whole bunch of customers, and they weren't even using, they were claiming this much, and they weren't doing anything. They weren't lobbying, they weren't even submitting the proposals to the right place, they were using the wrong set of procedures. So what's happened is the FBI is onto them now, and they wanted basically documentation from somebody who does grants as to what the issues were that this company committed, because to the tune of like $22,000 a pop for a simple 6-8 page proposal. So my point is that the government does have regulations in effect for any time it spends money. So I know we as taxpayers can look at it and say, what are you guys spending so much for? But there's a lot of regulations to make sure they're as prudent as possible. And that's an example of that. Program management. Other things we have to do, we'll talk about this, we do all deliverables, we'll talk about that. Oh, and then if new work is one, so now you have the contract and this is your scope. But now what the government has said is, we want to add some additional work. So we're increasing the scope, but we're also increasing the schedule, and we're also increasing the price or the budget. How do you integrate that new piece of work into what your existing stuff is? During shutdown, as I said, you have to make sure that you have compliance with all the prime contracts, subcontract, and service level agreements until the last day of the contract. You have to conduct this orderly transition of work so that the subcontractors don't try to charge higher prices to you. You have to downsize your structure or change people as needed. So some people, if you have 5 people leave, you need to bring 5 new people in, and you only have a month of the contract, just so that you're not deemed non-compliant. You have to return all your resources, both internally and externally, so if you had security clearances with the government, you have to get them all undone. If you have any information from the government, you have to give it all back. You have to put your audit documents together to make sure everything's been correctly processed. Adhere to everything until the last day of the contract, return all the files, close out all task orders, and then you submit your final invoice. Okay, I think that's a good stopping point. So let's take a 10-minute break and we'll come back up.